Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. Ehud Barak unveils strategy for bringing down Israel's government back in March of this year, 2023. And if you'll recall, these protests in Israel started in January, but really started taking off in March and in April around the time of Passover. And it turns out that they're not so organic, or at least um, they're not just a grassroots thing. I think there's what I'm about to show you. I think it's evidence that this is essentially fits the color revolution pattern that we've talked so much about on the channel. Now, I'm putting this out first to members only. I just barely did a video talking about Netanyahu and his heart failing, so I don't want to overdo it with the Israeli stuff in one day. I'm going to put it out to members only first and then put this out a day or two later, just so that you don't miss this. If you want to become a member, I have exclusive content in the members only section of my channel, and then also you get a first peek at some of these other videos like this one. So if you go to the channel homepage right here, you scroll all the way down, you'll see members only. You can just click on one of these videos and then it'll prompt you to join. So that's how you would do that. Okay, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. Okay, so oh my gosh, this is so unbelievable. You're not even gonna like believe. Okay, look at what this guy says. Now, this is from JNS, Jewish News Syndicate. I'd never heard of these people before, but I have a couple other sources, plus the direct source that you can watch yourself on YouTube on the Chatham House YouTube channel. So I have the transcript right here, but I'm going to read from the articles. I verified it. They quoted him correctly. It starts at the 4-minute and 12 mark. What we're about to... the unbelievable things that he's going to say, talking about toppling the Israeli government, referring to Netanyahu because of the judicial overhaul and such. So let's just see what he says in these articles. Now remember, Ehud Barak, he was the prime minister of Israel at one point. Okay, in fact, let's see, Ehud Barak. I should have pulled this up. I'm sorry. I just want to remind myself when that was. Prime minister between July 1999 and March 2001. Before that, or no, after that, Minister of Defense. Okay, anyway, so there you go. Ehud Barak, the 10th Prime Minister of Israel. He's the one that's about to say these ridiculous things that you're about to hear. Former Israeli President, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak revealed his strategy for a counter-revolution, quote-unquote, to bring down the Netanyahu government, speaking in an address to Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, a London-based think tank, on Monday. It is so, just bold and arrogant, I think, to go to another country's think tank, in this case, the United Kingdom, and talk out loud about bringing down the government of your own country. Barak, a supporter of the anti-judicial reform protests which have roiled Israel and led Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to call for a temporary halt to the legislation, said he was sure his side would win, quote, because I know our people and we have empirical evidence for this, end quote. Oh, what empirical evidence are you talking about? He referred to the U.S. research of Professor Erica Chenoweth and political scientist Maria J. Steffen, who co-authored a 2012 book called Why Civil Resistance Works, The Strategic Logic of Nonviolent Conflict. Barak said the two researchers looked at hundreds of civil protests from 1900 to 2006. And, quote, they found a common denominator, end quote. Protests that succeeded included 3.5% of the population, or roughly 8% of the adult population, and, quote, listen to this, tenaciously and persistently, end quote, keep up the protests, boycotts, and civil disobedience. That is outrageous. A tiny minority of the country, according to this, is what you need to achieve to overthrow the government. Yeah, democracy. Quote, at the end, the government, this is Ehud Barak talking, at the end, the government either falls or capitulates. We already crossed this number in less than 3 months, so we are heading in the right direction. This is simply outrageous. Former Prime Minister of Israel talking about toppling the legitimate government, elected officials that are in office right now. So what you have to do is get the protests going. You have to reach a threshold of 3.5% or 8% adults, and then you're in good shape for getting what you want. Unbelievable. Barak said Israel's government is acting, quote, in a blatantly illegitimate manner and is trying to make Israel basically a dictatorship or a non-democratic kind of entity. That's ironic because that is exactly what you are doing and what you are talking about. You think that you know better than those that elected who is in office right now. And so, because you know better and you're on the right side, well, oh, it's okay. We can go through a non-democratic process to do what we know is best. Holy cow. So this article is from back in March. Here's one from Israel Today, dated yesterday at the time that I'm recording this, July 23rd. Barak detailed plans to bring down government 3 years ago. Okay, so let's read that again. 3 years ago. So the date of this article is 2023, and this Chatham House thing, this took place earlier this year. This was not 3 years ago. This was several months ago. So what are we talking about now? So this now goes back to 2020. Yeah, it does. So this is before. Now we're getting into territory where this is like before even talking about judicial reform. Uh, let's see. List of Israeli prime ministers. Let's take a look at this, shall we? Let's go to the Britannica article for this. So back in 2020, Benjamin Netanyahu was in office from 2009 to 2021, and he had been in office the longest out of any other prime minister, and a lot of people were upset at him for various reasons, wanted to get him out. There was a coalition of different political parties that came together. They got the vote, and they had an agreement where Naftali Bennett would be prime minister first for the first half, and then Yair Lapid second. And they were the ones that were in power 2021 until 2022. Ultimately, the government didn't really work. And then Benjamin Netanyahu got back in power because he was elected, just like Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid was elected, just like how Ehud Barak was elected in 1999. So, okay, back to the year 2020, when Benjamin Netanyahu was in office the first time before this most recent time that we're currently in. Israel's public diplomacy minister, Galit Distel Atbaryan, Likud party, on Friday exposed what she claimed was the plan of former Prime Minister Ehud Barak to bring down the government. In the Twitter post, the Likud lawmaker describes an interview with Barak from July 2020 on Forum 555 or Forum 555, a group of retired pilots and navigators. So completely different forum. Um, uh, Israeli Air Force veterans 3 years ago. In the interview, Barak detailed his quote unquote master plan for creating civil unrest in a future coalition, she said, such as the one currently being led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which since the start of the year has faced unrelenting opposition to its judicial reform initiative. Atbarian summarized the interview, which she reminded readers occurred a few years before the current right-wing and religious coalition took power. It began its push to reform the judicial branch. The plan, she said, included deliberately inflaming the civilian population, creating a false representation of a danger to democracy, and bankrolling protests, including purchasing flags. Do you remember how I think I brought this up in one of the recent videos? So let's see, Knesset camp tents. It'll be easy to find. Okay, one day ago, Al Jazeera. Tent city erected outside Israeli Knesset before judicial vote. Oh, that's nice. So all these people who marched from Tel Aviv, just conveniently, someone paid for all these tents to be there for them, so they'd have somewhere to stay once they reached Jerusalem. Now, to be fair, I haven't researched this. Maybe there was some kind of uh, pooling of funds. Maybe there was some kind of organization behind this, but it's not beyond the stretch of the imagination that, like this article says here, Israel Today, that it was bankrolled by other interests, people that are higher up, including purchasing flags. Yeah, and you see these like different protests and things going on. Let's go to profile. So this is my Twitter profile. I would encourage you to check it out. I try and find all the interesting stuff and retweet it. But anytime you see any pictures of the protests, you always have just all these flags, as though these people, went out, they bought their flags, or they brought their flags from home, so on and so forth. I'm not so sure about that. All their merchandise, all their merch, probably paid for, and we know that that's happened in other places too. I'm not going to go off onto tangents, but it's not just Israel. There's people that essentially fund these things and provide the ammo, so to speak, and the props and everything else for the big show. Okay, so, oh my gosh, it's just so ridiculous. Okay, so the plan, she said, included deliberately inflaming the civilian population, creating a false representation of a danger to democracy. And I swear, every single article that I find, usually from a leftist outlet, always includes that key phrase, fighting for democracy, trying to save Israel's democracy, and bankrolling protests, including purchasing flags. Okay, later, this is talking about Ehud Barak. He went on to say that should Netanyahu somehow disappear from the scene, and should Israel's situation worsen on various fronts, that, quote, I am more suitable and prepared than any other person in the country to take the wheel. Okay, all right, so maybe we know where he's coming from in all this and what his motivations may be. Barak, in a Twitter post published on Friday, claimed that the video interview being shared was incomplete and said it wasn't real, or it didn't reveal any new information. Yeah, he's referring to the one that I have up right here. So if you want to watch the complete one, and I didn't see anything that would redeem him in any way from what he's being accused, it's right here. You can watch it. Start from the beginning. Start at 4:12 and then read the whole thing or listen to the whole thing. The part that I listened to, and I listened to what he said after this, it didn't redeem him. It's like he was like, among friends where he could do no wrong. He wasn't in any trouble. No one was going to come after him. And he was just speaking openly about his blatant plan to he himself potentially get back in power, or just like he said, to topple the elected government in Israel. Anyway, Barak, in a Twitter post published on Friday, claimed that the video interview being shared was incomplete and said it didn't reveal any new information. Quote, Netanyahu's mouthpieces, by mistake, cut short the end of the sentence. Then I told him, let it not happen and let them not happen. It's not the way it sounded when I was listening to it. There's nothing new in this quote unquote fascinating discovery. I have repeated this story at least 3 times live in the past, he wrote. Okay, Times of Israel. Predicting dictatorship. Prime Minister Barak says citizens may need to disobey leaders. This was published in February. So this is even before this one that I read, the very first article. This is much closer to the beginning of the judicial overhaul protests. Former Prime Minister Ehud Barak warned on Thursday that Israel was weeks away from descending into a dictatorship. Oh, so a threat to democracy, due to the hardline government's push to upend the judiciary, adding that people would be duty-bound to refuse orders by a quote-unquote illegitimate regime. Well, who said that? I haven't seen any articles, not even from these media outlets, that there was anything illegitimate about Netanyahu's government. I haven't. Maybe I missed them. I don't know. If they're out there, it doesn't seem like it's been a big deal. I don't see them talking about it in these protests even. Not that I can see. They're just upset that this is happening, that it shouldn't happen, according to them. Speaking at a conference hosted by the left-leaning Israeli news daily, Haaretz, Barak, a former defense minister and IDF chief of staff, said Israel was facing, quote-unquote, the gravest national crisis since the outbreak of the 1948, or after the outbreak of war in 1948, after it declared its independence, and now risked becoming a quote-unquote de facto dictatorship if the hard-right coalition led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu completes its plans to impose radical sweeping changes to the judiciary system. I don't know. And I do remember people saying, like, this is the worst. This is back like in March and April. People saying that this is the worst crisis since the Yom Kippur War. I hadn't heard this before, though, that this is the worst crisis or the gravest crisis since the War of Independence. You know, him potentially being one of the masterminds, or just being in league with the masterminds of this. Maybe he's talking that way because that's what they intend. They intend for a radical change in Israel, or a radical coming to power, or what have you. You know, a big milestone, essentially. Okay, later in the article, following Barak's comments, the Likud party filed a complaint against him with the police, accusing him of, quote, incitement to violence, publishing calls to violence, and harming the government and public order in the country. So, I guess there's nothing happened. Otherwise, there'd probably be a story. I think I remember reading some of the recent articles saying that he's still involved with the judicial overhaul protests. So I don't think anything happened. And you have to question that. It's like, it's pretty clear that he's been talking about overthrowing the government. I don't know what happened with that. Is there an investigation? I don't know. Okay, Ehud Barak. He accused the Netanyahu government of pursuing a coup d'état. Oh, okay, of the judicial branch. That's interesting. You're saying that Netanyahu is pursuing a coup d'état as you are openly talking about a coup d'état, um, all over the place. But just openly over in England, with the Chatham House think tank forum, we have the empirical evidence. We know how it happens, and oh my gosh, it's just so insane. It's hypocritical. He is literally trying to topple the government. And he's saying that Netanyahu is pursuing a coup d'etat. No, Netanyahu is going through the legal process, getting votes. He even There's this long period of time between April and now where there was all this trying to come to a agreement, compromise. It's been going on for months. He could have tried and push it through all the way back in March and April, but no, going through the legal process. People, hey, Ehud Barak, are you elected right now? Are you the prime minister of Israel? No. So what you're going to do is you're going to take yourself and a bunch of other people that are not elected, a minority of the country, and try and topple the government. And that's okay. It's just, I don't know. It's just insane. Sorry, this whole story, uh, it's kind of gotten me a little riled up because it's blatant, it's hypocritical. Um, a lot of aspects to this are just outrageous, like doctors strike. You can't do that when you're a doctor, and you can't do that when you're in the military. Those are professions that should be protest free. They're needed to help run society, the critical uh, parts of society, defense, medicine. This whole thing is just so bizarre. Speaking of which, look at this. So this is also on my Twitter account. I retweeted this from Iman Mak Moncada. The Sariyat Matkal is the equivalent of 22 SAS in the UK or Delta Force in the US. Oh, what are you talking about? Breaking. Most of Special Ops Unit Sariyat Matkal's active duty reserves announce end of their service, crippling the force once commanded by, oh, guess who? Ehud Barak, in which Netanyahu served. In a half hour after law was passed, 100 active reserve fighters joined 272 signatories. So this is Israel's equivalent, according to this, and I don't know if that's true, but I believe them, Delta Force, or 22 SAS in the UK. Just stepping away from duty, because that's not dangerous for Israel. And this is backed up. This is in Haaretz. Hundreds of Naval Commando Unit reservists say they refuse to serve until judicial coup stops. Hundreds of reservists from IDF's Naval Commando Unit announced on Saturday their refusal to serve until the judicial coup is brought to a halt. The reservists they will not report for duty until the legislation is completely halted, along with the quote-unquote erosion of Israel's democratic foundations. Ironic, you are doing something that is incredibly not democratic, as expressed in a letter launched to Defense Minister Yoav Gallant himself, a former commander of the elite unit. Earlier on the same day, around 100 reserve officers and soldiers who are part of the elite EGOS unit also made a similar declaration. They proclaimed that they would cease their service if the coup legislation were to advance without a broad consensus being reached. Well, that's not how democracy works. Democracy works where people are elected by a majority of votes, and then they get down to business and they pass laws. And that's exactly what's happening. If you're meaning a broad consensus, meaning your small minority in the country have to agree to. Sorry, that's not how democracy works. And I understand, like, there's the whole argument, like, democracy versus republic and so forth. I'm not going to go down that route. I'm trying to keep it simple. Okay. So no one think that I'm like confused about that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So there's a new update. Really disturbing. Really disturbing. And it's because characters like this are involved that I think that this situation is much more serious than just organic protest, because that's probably how the majority of people view it. People that aren't really following the story, people that don't really care what's happening in Israel, people that are just concerned about what they're going to do on the weekend and stuff like that, getting time off, having barbecues. I'm not so sure that they realize just how serious this is and how it seems well organized and how much of a plan there is. And so I don't think it's something that's just going to taper off and go away, because I think there are much larger forces at play in the background that are going to try and ensure that something happens. So we're going to have to keep watching this. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.